I know. I've given grief to the plethora of bank videos that made a run last year on YouTube, but I've never had much to talk about with bank issues. Until now. I'll go over what happened along with some of the legitimate issues that many of our banks are faced with today. Some that you might not even be aware of. Is your money really safe in the bank? And why is it so important to physically hold your silver, gold, and other assets? Stay tuned. YouTube, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. I hope everyone's doing well, and I'd like to take a second to thank you for being here with me today. Your support has been amazing, which of course makes you guys part of the best damn community here on YouTube, without a doubt. You've all helped this little channel grow, and it means more than you know. So today, we're going to talk about the potential dangers of keeping cash in your bank, a situation that I recently experienced, and why it's so important to hold assets outside of the bank, like silver and gold. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and roll this thing.
Well, we're waiting.
Alright, so what happened at my bank? Well, there was a coin show in Raleigh this past weekend, and on Friday I went to my bank to withdraw some cash from my savings that I keep for whatever I need it for. I figured I'd just hit the ATM since the daily limit is $1,000, and that's about how much I wanted, since I didn't plan on buying gold at the show. And whatever I didn't use, I just stack with the cash I stash every payday, which is off limits and for emergencies only. I do like to keep X amount of monthly expenses in case life takes a turn. And that's because I don't want to have to touch my metals and cash them in for an emergency if it can be helped. Anyway, I get to the outdoor ATM. It's closed. One next to it, closed. Well, damn. So I walked on in, and there's a huge line formed up, and people are sitting in rows of seats behind that line waiting their turn. So with a little reservation, I sat down, waited a bit, and got to talking to the person next to me. She'd heard that there were limited funds due to having limited funds to give. Now, I can't put any credence behind that claim or corroborate it, because no matter what the reason was, I wasn't about to sit there for what likely looked like an hour or more. So in my quest for cash, I was shot down right where I was sitting.
I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
I walked out of the bank with my pockets just as empty as they were when I first went in. At that point, I figured I'd just tap into my stash cash for the show. Since the next nearest branch for my bank was over an hour away in traffic with another hour to get home in traffic on a Friday. And I really didn't want to go back on the Saturday morning of the show. So that's literally the first time I'd ever not been able to get cash from my bank. The question is this scenario something that's going to become more commonplace as time slips on? I guess we'll find out. So let's talk about banks really quickly and how they operate, because there are definitely some concerns you need to be aware of if you're not already. Now, I'm not saying run and pull all your money out and slap it between your mattresses.
Don't you do it! Don't you!
I'm just saying that knowledge is power, and you need to be aware of the potential fallout that banks face. Now, here's how they run. Banks function on a system called fractional reserve banking, which basically allows them to lend more money than they have in reserves. And up until 2020, the Federal Reserve mandated that banks maintain around 3 to 10% reserve, depending on the size of that bank's holdings. Now, to break that down in layman's terms, if every customer at that bank decided to withdraw all their money at one time, and we call this a bank run, that bank would only have 10% of the total deposits on hand to give back, which means a lot of folks aren't getting their money, and it absolutely exposes a bank's liquidity deficit. It reminds me of a really, really cool scene in It's a Wonderful Life where this happens, and that scene really explains the nature of operating under a fractional reserve system. Check out this snippet.
You're thinking of this place all wrong, as if I had the money back in a safe. The money's not here. Well, your money's in Joe's house. That's right next to yours. And in the Kennedy house, and Mrs. Maitland's house, and 100 others.
Now, as bad as that is, it actually gets worse, believe it or not. On March 26, 2020, in response to the COVID pandemic, that 10% requirement was slashed by the Fed all the way to zero. Nothing. Nada. Zip. Zilch. So in that clip I just played, you heard George tell everyone, hey, your money's invested in other folks' houses. Well, that's one of the way banks make their money, loaning out your deposits and charging interest on them. They can make far more profit that way rather than, say, keeping the funds of the Federal Reserve. And just to give you an idea what some of the biggest banks are holding in reserve versus actual deposits, I'm going to slap some knowledge on you. These are some recent numbers from last year. Bank of America had $1.93 trillion in deposits in cash. They held only 2% of it in reserve. JP Morgan had $2.3 trillion in deposits in cash. They only held 2% of it in reserve. And Silicon Valley Bank, you heard about them last year, they had $175 billion in deposits in cash, and they only held 5% of it in reserve. That means 95 to 98% of our money is being lent out or utilized, and the banks are making good profits on the interest of those loans. That's how they stay in business, but it also opens up a plethora of risk. Now, you might be wondering, why should I worry about my money in the bank? My deposits are FDIC insured. Neil, you're just trying to spread panic.
Shut up! You're killing me, Smalls.
Well, yeah, the FDIC does tell you your money's insured up to $250,000. But here's what many don't know about FDIC. At present, they're only holding 0.6 to 1% of the total amount of U.S. bank deposits. Think about that number for a minute. 0.6 to 1% of all the deposits in the country would be covered. That's nothing. All those bank failures in 2023 took a huge chunk out of their holdings. And here's where it gets really dicey. If one more major bank were to collapse, that entire FDIC fund could be exhausted completely. So how are they countering that little accident waiting to happen? Well, one way is that they're levying special assessments on the larger banks to, kind of fill the war chest back up. But if a majority of the general public was aware of this, it would do nothing to instill confidence in the U.S. banking system at this point. And on a side note, if any of you are utilizing safe deposit boxes for your precious metals and other valuables, you may want to reconsider. Because if a bank shuts down, there is no guarantee you'll get your stuff back anytime soon until things get sorted out. The legal system could take days, months, even years. Now, you can buy insurance for your boxes, but that can be costly. And remember, the bank's insurance won't cover it because they don't know what you have in that box. Now, remember, it brings back an old statement. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. And considering we've already seen a number of banks collapse, like Silicon Valley, Signature, Silvergate, Credit Suisse, First Republic, and more, it's pretty evident that trust in banks is starting to take a pretty big hit as these reliability issues continue to surface. Now, the death blow for Silicon Valley was when they had to liquidate their U.S. government bonds at a loss just to satisfy withdrawal demands. This fate could soon happen with others, so keep your ears to the wall and monitor your banks closely. All right. So enough of the bank stuff. Again, don't go running out and emptying your bank account because of a YouTube video. That's not what I'm telling you to do here. Instead, the point of this video is not only to give some insight how banks run or the inherent risks that can occur, but it was also to emphasize the point that it does make sense to hold assets outside of the banking system, whether it's cash, metals, crypto, anything that can help you get along if your bank puts you through hell with either a serious issue or collapses completely. Now we know that FDIC might not be there for us if a collapse does occur. We also know that if a bank shuts down, it might take forever to recover anything we were storing in one of their safe deposit boxes due to an incredibly slow-moving legal system. So it's a solid strategy to keep something with intrinsic value outside of the system. And for those of us who have crypto, I also think that it's important to never store your stuff through the online exchange. Come on, put that stuff in a cold storage wallet and lock it up. And lastly, don't count on insurance in the United States government to be there for you in the event of an economic catastrophe. Take steps. Protect yourself and your family. Keep an asset or assets close by and accessible. We can only hope this stuff never happens to us, but what if our bank is the next Silicon, Signature, Credit Suisse? We never know anymore. Anyway, I hope this video at least has you thinking of cause and effect within the banking system and the options you can take that'll benefit you in the event something like this does happen. In today's world, assuming anything can be our downfall, and it can be a costly one. That's just the reality of the world we're living in. Stay sharp out there, folks. Keep stacking those assets. All right. There you have it. So what are your thoughts on the safety measures that banks have in place to protect your money? Do you have full confidence in your branch? And are you stacking and physically holding assets with value outside of the banking system? Be sure to leave a comment below and let me know what your thoughts are. I love going through them, so make sure you sound off. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Silver and Gold Stack Attack. And if you made it this far, well, kudos. to you. I'll definitely catch up with you in the next episode, but in the meantime, oh yeah, you know what's up.
What do you want to do with your life?
I want to stop.
Damn right, get stacked. Stay safe and be well, everyone. I am out of here. Peace, folks.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
Oh, yes. And what was that beginning, middle, and end part again?